Hello and welcome to Business Insider with Mario Toneguzzi on YYC Business. Joining me today is Ezra Levant, who is publisher of Rebel News. Thanks for joining us today, Ezra.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Let's talk about the media, the state of the media in Canada these days, and more precisely when we're looking at what we term as the mainstream media. First of all, just a general thought, Ezra, what do you think the state is right now of that mainstream big media?
Well, it's like Charles Dickens said, it's the best of times and the worst of times. How can both be true? Well, on the one hand, we consume more news media and media of all sorts than ever before. We don't just sit down and read a newspaper once and sit down and watch a movie once. We're constantly checking things on our phone, our social media. It's never ending. So we want more information than ever. It's not even a 24-hour news cycle, it's constant. On the other hand, the old mediums don't work anymore. I don't think printing presses and mailing magazines. I used to be in the magazine business 15 years ago with the Western Standard. The idea that you would wait for a printing press to send that magazine to the mailman who would deliver it. So a lot of the old models are being destroyed. There's new competitors, these mega web giants, as they're sometimes called. So I think that companies have to find new ways to earn their overheads. At Rebel News, we've found two ways. One is through subscriptions, people who pay us $8 a month, which is hard to do on an internet where people are used to getting things for free, but I think people are learning to pay a subscription. And secondly, through crowdfunding, which is our main way of making money. I don't know if those are applicable to all media, but it's how we've been able to hire 31 staff.
You know, when you look at the industry, especially the big giants, right? Would they be around today if it wasn't for the federal government bailing them out?
Well, when I meant giants, I was thinking more Facebook, Google, YouTube. They've sopped up the ad money. I think that if you're referring to Post Media and the newspapers, I think they would be around in a new form, because there's always going to be people in every city who want the news, including local news. And the role that the Calgary Herald and the Calgary Sun play in Calgary, it's important. But if they weren't getting that bailout from the feds, maybe it would force them to innovate a little bit or cut costs. Let me give you a super quick example. Moses Znaimer was a real TV innovator. And one of his moves was to create a position he called videographer, basically a journalist who also was his own cameraman. And he made that sort of cool, like these videographers out on the prowl. Well, it was sort of cool, but it was also a way to cut his payroll in half to have, you don't need a cameraman and a journalist. So there's creative ways of saving money and unlocking talent. And I think that, frankly, by applying to the government for grants, that might actually slow down the kind of innovations that are necessary in the media. When we started Rebel News, I had just come from Sun News Network. I had $1 million studio. I had 5 people in the control room. There was probably 15 people who worked on my show altogether. The cameras in the studio were $250,000 each. Our first video, Rebel News, was filmed in my living room on a little handheld camera. And you know what? Who cares? Did anyone really, if you're an expert, you can see the difference in quality, but that's not what people come for. So I think, people always want to know what's going on. They want to be entertained. They want to be informed. They want to be in the know. That will happen. It's up to the media companies to think, well, how do I connect with our own customers?
Now, obviously with Rebel News and what we do at YYC Business, and then there's tons of other ones. Do you see a continued proliferation of these kind of niche media outlets, and why are we seeing more and more of them?
Absolutely. I mean, blogs started to allow anyone to become a journalist because they pretty much removed any barriers to entry. And now anyone with a Twitter feed and Instagram page can get a following if they're interesting or controversial. There are Instagram influencers who make 7 figures. Now the social media companies are introducing tipping, where you can give a few bucks here or there. On YouTube, for example, you can give someone $5 in a super chat, they call it. So not only are we going to see it, literally every person can become a journalist. So that's a challenge for professional journalists. Can you be better, smarter, faster? Can you differentiate yourself from literally a million other people trying to be journalists? I think the answer is yes, but it's got to make everybody a little bit sharper. And I think individual brands, like, just to take you as an example, Mario, I mean, you've been in the business for literally decades. You've built up a reputation. That is what's going to distinguish you from some up and comer who maybe is, what do you have to sell? Because all of a sudden you're on an equal footing. You had decades in the legacy media and some up and comers brand new. You've got to look to what is your comparative advantage. And I think you're going to see different people try different things. It's the lack of barriers to entry is what's so terrifying, because anyone's a journalist.
Yeah, exactly. When you look at those, whether it's CBC, Post Media, some of the major networks, et cetera, what is your biggest criticism of the media these days?
Well, I mean, some of my criticisms are just out of a sense of rivalry. But putting those aside, I think that the window of political disagreement has been shrunk. You're not allowed to have really edgy opinions. You'll be canceled or deplatformed. I remember when talk radio was really lively in Canada.
Yeah.
I'd say in the 90s, and you had a wider spectrum of opinion. I think political correctness has shrunk that. I think it's even more shrunk in newspapers. The Sun chain is a little more flavorful. The National Post, you still have Rex Murphy and Conrad Black, but I think that the range of opinion in the legacy media has shrunk. And what that's done, Mario, in my opinion, is it's pushed viewers to places where they can get more authentic voices. I think Rebel News, I mean, we have had more than 600 million views on YouTube. We have almost 1.5 million YouTube subscribers, and that's just on YouTube. Yeah. We're also on Twitter and Facebook. Why? I think it's because those people are looking for something that they can't get in the legacy media, and they're looking for a different point of view. You might be deplatformed or marginalized in the legacy media, but then you can start your own thing outside it and grow as quite a big competitor. So I think that the vanillaization of opinion and journalism, the sameness, it actually is a reason people are not reading legacy media. There's other reasons too. Yeah. But my criticism with the mainstream media isn't just that they're liberal, although I think they often are. It's the boringness. It's the sameness. Last point, our little company, Rebel News, has been kept out of the parliamentary press gallery. They refuse our application. They say we have too strong an opinion. They claim we're advocates, whatever. I would respond by saying a lot of other journalists are advocates, including the CBC and the Toronto Star. But what has that done to us? It means we don't get into the stage managed press conferences. All right, how much news was there really in those stage managed press conferences? How much news am I really missing out on because I wasn't given a press release and handled? By forcing me to dig up my own news, we're probably breaking more stories than just reading some lines fed to us by a spin doctor.
Yeah, no, I hear you. When you look at some of the things that are going on with the federal government when it comes to the media, can you talk a little bit, Ezra, about Bill C-10? Yeah. I'm sure it's something that the media talks a lot about, but the average Canadian probably has no clue. If I walk down the street and say, what's your opinion of Bill C-10? They wouldn't have an idea about it. First of all, explain to us, what it is and what your thoughts are about it and its impact it's going to have.
Sure. Canadians might know that TV and radio has long been regulated by a regulator called the CRTC. They would decide who gets a TV or radio license. They would have a lot of control about what shows are on there. And actually, they have the ability to force cable companies to carry things. For example, every house in Alberta that has basic cable must get French CBC, even though I don't know how many would choose that on their own. You also have to pay for it, whether or not you watch it. So that was all done by government regulators, but they really didn't have any power over the internet. It's one of the reasons why people love the internet so much. They can choose things of their own taste. They don't have to obey a regulator. They can choose the wrong thing. They can choose foreign things. They can choose, and C10 is the federal government's attempt to say, all right, we're going to regulate the internet in a comparable way, the way that we've regulated TV stations. So they specifically talk about YouTube, for example. Well, part of the fun of YouTube is how free it is and how much choice there is. Now C10 puts that under the command of the CRTC. And one of the things I'm worried about is, how do you discover things on YouTube? The search engine, their suggestions, that's their algorithm, that's your own choice. One of the things I'm most worried about is that Stephen Guilbeault, the Heritage Minister, said he wants to tamper with what he calls discoverability. He wants to be able to force feed Canadians certain things, and by implication, boost other things, boost things that he likes and throttle things he doesn't. So I'm worried about that, because that's interference, I think, with journalistic independence and with the rights of viewers to choose what they want. It also implies, theoretically, they could ban things. And C10 is one bill. It sort of grants jurisdiction, but other bills are coming. Bill C36, where anything called hate speech, which is a very vague definition, can be penalized. Guilbeault has also talked about passing a rule that comments on social media, like a little comment you put on your friend's Facebook page or something you say on Instagram or Twitter, that those will be regulated by the government, and there would be massive fines for the companies if they don't take certain things down. So C10, I think, is, it's not the scariest of the bills. It's the one that sets the table for what's to come. It's the one that says, we're now going to regulate the internet like TV and radio, but it's those successor bills that say, well, we're going to do this, we're going to ban this, we're going to promote that. They can't do those without C10 giving them some sort of jurisdiction over the internet. I'm really worried, because the internet is wonderful because it's free, because it's so diverse, because everyone gets to choose their own way. We don't have to watch what Guilbeault or Trudeau tell us to watch. You can if you want, but you don't have to. I'm worried that the freedom is going to be taken away from us.
Okay, super. Let's go back a bit, rewind, and talk a little bit about Rebel News. Sure. Because it really has been such a success story. First of all, when did you start it?
Sure. Well, we started it when the Sun News Network shut down in February of 2015. Okay. Just a group of us were all laid off on the same day. Yeah. And so 8 of us said, well, let's see if we can try and replicate what we did, but do it on YouTube in a very low cost way. So instead of $1 million studio, we would just record on the street. Yeah. Instead of $250,000 cameras, let's use our cell phones. And instead of relying on a big corporation for money, we tried crowdfunding, which is, back then it was a fairly new idea. It still is sort of new. The idea that people just chip in on the credit card. So we've been able to build up, in the last 6 years, we have more than 30 staff. We have offices around the country, and we've broken some stories. We travel around, we publish books. And because we're not regulated by the CRTC, we don't have the same problems that Sun News had. We were always being hassled by regulators. Not so at Rebel News. That's one of the reasons I'm worried about C10, is I don't want to come back under the thumb of politicians. We have almost 1.5 million YouTube subscribers. We have a lot of supporters. So I guess I'm saying it's possible to succeed without a government bailout. We don't take any government money. It's possible to do that. And we're just very attentive to our viewers, because if we don't give them what they want, we're going to be out of business pretty quick.
So is that the key, for your success, when you've seen Rebel News starting here and then how it shot up to where it is today? What would you say the key to that success has been?
Well, I think part of it is our motto is telling the other side of the story. I believe that in Canada, certain stories are told very frequently, very exhaustively. For example, if you're worried about global warming, so many legacy media will give you the Greta side of the story. If you believe in lockdowns, so many media will give you that side of the story. I think a classic example for me is the case of the Al-Qaeda terrorist Omar Khadr. The media party, that's a phrase I use for all the insiders, all the established folks, they all agreed that giving him $10.5 million in a public apology was the right thing. Like that was almost unanimous. Toronto Star, Globe and Mail, CBC. Our motto is telling the other side of the story. So we zig where the other guys zag. And since there's such a sameness in the media party, by giving people the alternative point of view, the independent point of view, we've really picked up a lot of people who feel they're not getting the whole picture from the media party, or people who feel like dissidents. And these days, like the lockdown has been very polarizing. We're into a lot of extreme issues. There's racialization issues, like there's battles, like the American version of Black Lives Matter. I think we're starting to see some of those issues in Canada. I think people are worried about everyone being tarnished as a racist or a sexist. And I think there's people want the other side of the story. We give that to them. So I don't know if there's be room for 10 Rebel News networks in Canada, but there's certainly room for one of them. And I always say that we would be put out of business very soon if the legacy media actually gave more conservatives or dissidents a voice within them. Like I look at the CBC, and there's no one in that entire mega corporation who reflects my point of view. They had Rex Murphy there, but they put him in as a talk show host for the radio call-in show. But other than that, I couldn't, like Don Cherry maybe, but they fired him. I can't name a single voice in the CBC that I feel that my point of view is being reflected, let alone respected.
Yeah.
So we're providing that other place.
Okay, super. Well, thanks so much, Ezra, for joining us today.
Well, it's my pleasure, Mario. It's great to see you. It looks like you're doing great, and thank you for the time. I wish you good luck. I think that you are doing the right thing. You are providing the other side of the story. You're providing an interesting counterpoint to the legacy media, and I wish you nothing but success.
Well, super. Thank you very much. That was Ezra Levant, publisher of the Rebel News Network. This has been Business Insider with Mario Toneguzzi on YYC Business. Thanks for joining us today.